we're going to be reviewing the Foundation and Practitioner Certification Programs and what's changed from APMG. So this webinar is intended to be interactive, so you can ask questions at any point, and then I'm going to be reviewing what are the key points about the Change Management Certification Programs and the difference between the old one and the new one, because we've made some really superb updates. So what I'm going to do now, you can see me, but I'm going to be turning off my camera, so I'm going to wave goodbye, and once we have the question and answer period, I'll turn it back on, okay? All right, so take off the camera and we'll get started. So what you will see to the right is your control panel, and the next thing where you see the arrow is showing is you can put it on full screen if you decide to press on that, click on the blue button. One button below that is for you to raise your hand. So if you have any questions throughout the session, preferably if you can use the question box as opposed to the chat box, that would be awesome. And as you're writing in your questions, we've got our lovely Lauren Connor, who's going to be on the call too, and she is going to be monitoring any of the questions and letting us know if somebody has a burning question for me. And then, of course, myself, you see here, Siobhan Brown, and I'm going to be your facilitator for today. If you have any technical issues, anything's wrong with your sound or perhaps the control panel, please send a message and Lauren will respond back to you. So with that, we're going to get started. So I got my first question for you. Every time you see a question, you're actually going to see that little bubble that just showed up to the right-hand side. So here, the bubble shows up again, is why can change be challenging? Because I know it's not always an easy thing to deal with. So why can change be challenging? I'm going to give you a minute and just jot down your initial thoughts and put those in, your responses in the question box. Okay, so I can see here from a few of you that change can be very challenging when it relates to the people. Yes, absolutely. Fear of the unknown. Thanks, Rosalind. That is absolutely correct, because oftentimes we don't know what's going to come next. We've got fear of people wanting to be in control and that they've lost control. Yes, that's another one that often happens. You're already overloaded with a lot of different work. Let's see. That's correct. Change results in work when our days are already overloaded. Absolutely. Something always funny happens with change. It always tends to land more work on your plate than you actually expected, and you end up having to do multiple tasks. So while changes can be perceived as a good thing, it often ends up in lots of work. So let's talk about change, why it's challenging in general. Oftentimes there's a mismatch between what you want and what you expect and then what actually happens in terms of perception. And because of this mismatch, people often get a lot of anxiety that comes with it. Because we naturally want to seek control, when our expectations don't match our perceptions, this is when we experience the loss of control. And that loss of control is what really causes us to have anxiety and resistance towards change. And the thing is, as leaders, we need to be able to manage our teams as they're going through change, which means we have to deal with all the different emotions that come along with change. And that's not always an easy thing, because you're dealing with people who can be extremely excited about it to thinking that best idea is the worst idea and what were you smoking because it absolutely sucks. So this is why change can be so challenging, because you're dealing with a wide variety of reactions plus all the other intricacies to make the change work with your organization. So today what we're going to do is we're going to explore why the change is so challenging and why people want to take the change management practitioner program to be able to answer those questions and to be more effective in the workplace. So as we are looking here, the agenda today, what we're going to cover over is an overview of the Change Management Certification Program. I'm going to talk to you about what pre-work is required and how much time is going to be needed to set aside to prepare for the course. We're going to discuss the Change Management Foundation as well as the practitioner course and what are some of the differences with the old program. And then what does the certification actually mean at the end of the day? What are the standards that needed to be met in order for us to even run the program? And then I'm going to open up the floor for additional questions that you may have. All right, so let's get started here. The Change Management Certification is really a combination of two certifications. We've got the Foundation Certification and the Practitioner Certification Program. Together, it's a 5-day program. So the Foundation is actually 3 days and the Practitioner is 2 days. It will provide you with practical knowledge on change management techniques, tools, and strategies. And at the end of the day, it really is 2 certifications, which for some of you who have not taken exams in a long time, that means 2 exams that you're going to be taking. Yes, I can hear some of you cringing already. But not to worry, I will keep things fun and interesting, and we will make sure to prepare you for the exam by giving you some sample exam questions, and I'm there, of course, to answer any of your questions along the way. So the foundation course, as it overviews, is going to be 3 days, and it's going to cover key change management concepts, models, and approaches. And then you've got the practitioner course, which is 2 days, and that's, again, follows with another exam. And the practitioner course is going to really take a look at the application to the foundation knowledge that you just learned. And those 2 courses combined make the Change Management Practitioner certification. And this is where you then get your CMP designation, your Change Management Practitioner designation. So that's why it's a total, as you see, of 5 days. 3 foundation plus 2 practitioner equals 5 days for your designation. Some of you may have had your ProsSci or are considering, do I take ProsSci, do I go with APMG, which is the better route? So I'm going to break this down for you. Both are actually fantastic programs. They're both focused on leading change and managing individual reactions to change. For those of you who are considering ProsSci or already ProsSci certified, it's an excellent program. It examines what change management is more so from an individual perspective. It provides solid tools and strategies for the individuals and getting them ready for change. However, the APMG program delves a little bit deeper in terms of how to implement the change management from the levels from a team as well as an organizational standpoint. And it also delves a lot deeper in terms of stakeholder communications, benefits, ROI. The materials have been developed with the Change Management Institute, and they are the first to create the Change Management Book of Knowledge. So that's what APMG has done, which is a little bit different than ProsSci because they haven't actually done those things. So for those of you who do have your ProsSci certification and are considering the APMG, this would be like the next level up. And for those of you who don't have your ProsSci certification and are just sort of contemplating which route to go, my best advice to you is to go with whatever makes the most amount of sense for your organization and what you're currently doing. If you're looking at it from purely, strictly an individual perspective, ProsSci has some fantastic tools. If you're looking at it from an organization, team, and individual perspective, then APMG might be the better route for you in this case because it's going to delve in a much more deeper level. All right, so now that being said, we're going to go into some of the basics with the program. So the first 3 days are going to focus on various change management techniques and explore which could be effectively implemented into your organization. The structured approach is going to help you understand how to deal with change as an individual, as a member of a team or an organization, as well as a leader. The program design explores the impact the change has on 4 major areas, being individual change, the organization change, which also deals with team change too, and communications and stakeholder engagement. And then lastly, how to go about leading your organization through the change management practice. This program is going to prepare you for the APMG Change Management Foundation, which happens on the end of day 3. Now, the practitioner program goes beyond just the basics. So now you're looking at an application of the change management into different contexts in the last 2 days. At the end of this, a successful practitioner candidate should be able to apply the change management strategies, tools, and approaches to their current organizational change initiatives. Some additional factors that could actually impact whether or not a practitioner is going to be successful in implementing these strategies can deal with individual change management expertise. That means their ability to be able to handle individual reactions to the change, the complexity of the change itself. So if you're looking at a restructure, a culture change, the IT-based change, or merger and acquisitions, those are very complex change initiatives. And depending on what's going on, you may or may not get the support that you're looking for in the work environment, and that can also add as a third factor in terms of you being able to actually implement the strategies that we examine in this course. So this course is going to prepare you for the second exam, which is on day 5, and that is a 2.5-hour exam. The whole entire course itself is going to help you be able to implement the best selected approaches for your organization and the change need itself. In terms of pre-work, the old program had the book Making Sense of Change Management and so that it sticks, and that was a fantastic book. It's very well organized, it's easy to read, but it's a lot of reading. I'm not even going to lie. It's about a 500-page book, and most people only read about the first 250 pages, and that's probably sufficient to pass the exam, although the last 250 pages really delves deeper into complex type changes. What they've done now is they've changed the book over to the Change Manager's Handbook. It's all about change and being able to accept now. We have to let go of the old book and now into the new book. The new book is very theoretical based. It's very deep in terms of the knowledge base, and it's going to cover a wider topic areas as it relates to change management. The change management body of knowledge worked with APMG to put this book together, and it's extremely thorough. The other book is a Change Management Practitioner Handbook, which is approximately 35 pages or so, and that's more from the aspect of leading change, which is also really important for you to get those basics underway. So those are the two books that you need to have read. The second one is more so of a handbook guide as opposed to an actual book, but you still need to review it to be able to write the exam. It'll take you approximately 40 hours to get through the book as well as the practitioner handbook, so just to give you the heads up on that. And I would strongly advise that you read both of these before attending the session, so that as I'm reviewing the content and the material, it's like a second reminder as opposed to seeing the information for the very first time. In terms of your study time, you will get homework and assignments every night. It will be mostly a review of what we had in the class, plus to review or read ahead to what we're going to be discussing the next day. I would set aside approximately 2 hours of study per night just to give you enough prep time to write your exam. I'll also be providing sample exam questions so that you'll need that time at night to review the exam and go over the questions so you can come back the next day with any questions. So in terms of what are we going to be learning now, so at the end of the foundation course, this is the one that's 3 days, you're going to be able to understand how individuals are impacted by change. We're also going to take a look at the strategies that can help you lead them through the change and deal with the individual reactions. It'll provide you some additional insights on how organizations work, how the culture will impact the way that the change is being perceived, and models and processes for change. And lastly, it's going to help you, you'll also look at understanding the drivers of change. So what's precipitating this change to actually happen? Is it something that's internal, or is it an external motivator? What are the governance structures that are typically used in organizations to define what the change vision is, meaning what is the strategic direction that you want the organization to go? You'll also be able to appreciate how people prepare for change, what goes through their heads, how are they going to deal with the change, and what are the most typical reactions, and then how can we support their learning and their motivation through the change process, because as you know, their motivation tends to dip a little bit when things aren't going the way that they're accustomed. You're going to learn how to engage your stakeholders throughout the process and how to draft communication strategies and plans that are going to engage and appeal to your audience. You'll appreciate the impact of change on the organizations, how to assess whether or not an organization is ready for change, and then how to build that momentum throughout the change process so that at the end of the day you can sustain the change and that it continues to work and it doesn't actually end once the change is implemented. And then lastly, you're going to understand the importance of the change roles within the change team and how you can build support for an effective change team to lead it throughout the organization. So now I got a question for you. What is the most challenging aspect of leading and managing change? So we've got a poll that we're going to pull up, and I would like for you to just take a moment and let us know which of these 5 factors do you find the most challenging when you are leading and managing change? Is it dealing with the individual reactions, selecting strategies to manage organizational change, developing the appropriate communications to engage your stakeholders, to assess the impact of the change on the organization, or to align your systems, your structures, your processes and procedures to actually sustain the change? So let's see what you guys have to say. I'm going to give you guys like 5 more seconds. Okay. All right. So it looks like most of you have got in your thoughts. So it looks like the winner for this one is dealing with individual reactions to change. No surprise there. That was about 33%, closely followed by aligning the systems and structures to sustain the change, of course. So dealing with individual reactions can be a tough one because you're dealing with a wide array of reactions, from those that are excited, they're enthusiastic, they want to be your champions to change, to those that think that this is the worst idea possible and they're basically dragging their feet to come along with the change. Or they can even be more contentious and tell everybody how terrible the idea is and try to undermine the change itself. The great thing about this program is that it's going to address all of those areas. So for those of you who are also focused to, I think a third one was assessing the impact of change, we're going to talk about that too. The aligning systems to sustain change has been a new added to the program, and oftentimes people are very much wanting to know what are some of the techniques that I can use to keep the change going so that it actually sticks and it doesn't just fall off by the wayside as it's just a great idea. We did some stuff about it, but it's not actually working. And that's because people tend to revert back to their old behaviors. So we'll talk about that too in more details throughout the program. Now, so let's go through an overview. The foundation course structure is going to look like this. So on day one, we're going to start looking at the context, the individual, and the organization and how they deal with change. And then, of course, you've got some work in the evening to do. On day two, it's more around the stakeholder strategy and communications to engage your stakeholders. And again, some more work in the afternoon. And then on day three, we are going to look at the impact of change, change readiness, the change team, and preparing for resistance. And then at the end of day three is where you've got the foundation exam, which is about 40 minutes. And so this is where you've got some more work in the evening, as for those of you who are going to continue on to do the practitioner course. If you look at the course route map, you'll notice that those that are highlighted in orange are actually new additions to the course. So previously we did cover change in the individual and change in the organization, because those are the two key areas that many people have challenges with. What we did find is there was a lot of stakeholder engagements misses there, and that was something a lot of the participants felt that they would like to get more information on. How can I determine who are my stakeholders and what would be the best means of communication to engage them? And as we know that there are multiple methods to engage our stakeholders, we just have to figure out which ones would be the best for them. And we also know, for those of you who've taken any of my previous courses and webinars, that we need to communicate with our stakeholders at least 7 to 15 times to keep them engaged. Simply stating what the change is one time is not enough, because many of them take mini vacations, literally and figuratively speaking. So one message being sent, if they were on vacation, they're going to miss that. Or if they were distracted by another project or they had their time sort of monopolized with something else, they're going to completely miss that message that went out. So we have to figure out other ways to engage them and let them know about the change and how it's going to be rolled out. Which takes us basically to day three, the change impact. How is this going to impact the organization? How is this going to impact the individuals? And then how do we get them ready for change? And oftentimes we think we have a really great idea, and just by communicating it should be enough. But what you need to do is spend a lot of time in the planning phase to get the organizations ready for change, which could be upwards of even 18 months depending on how big the change is that you're trying to roll out. So by the end of day three now, we're going to have the foundation exam, and this will be marked in the class so you can get those results back pretty quickly. So let's set the context for change and why, change is so complicated. So as you look at this diagram, you get an idea of the complexity of change in organizations. And it's necessary for you as a leader to understand that at these 3 levels, or actually at these 4 levels here, it takes a lot for you to be able to manage what's really going on, what to say, what to do, and it can be quite challenging because the change itself may never actually fully be realized if you don't align all of these areas. So you, as a leader, you need to know what happens to the individual as they're dealing with change. What do you need to do to keep the organization engaged with the change? What do you need to get your stakeholders to be excited about the change? And how do you communicate it to them effectively? And then what would be the best change practices to deal with the impact of change as well as to get people ready? So this gives you more of a broader context in pictorial format. As we are looking at the foundation in more details, the introduction to the change management, as you sort of saw in the picture there, it's really going to build the context for change and a roadmap. It'll identify some factors that contribute to the change success and why you need to be focusing on that, because the reality is only 70% of change projects actually fail, and only 30% of them are successful. So we got to look at, well, what makes those successful ones so much better, and why are they working when the other ones are not? So we're going to take a look at that in more detail throughout the course. We're also going to see the links between the individual, team, and organizational change, and what leadership has to do with that. When you have very strong leadership, they can help move individuals through the change. They work with teams to identify any outstanding issues, and then they also work with the organization to help things move and then be sustained in the end. Now, this next aspect of the Change Management Foundation program is the focus on individuals and change, which is how do people learn when they are dealing with change? What goes through their mind? What are some of the common factors that they have to deal with? What are their preferences to learning? And so how does that play out? Why do people resist change? Because we all know that people aren't always quick to think this is a fantastic idea, and usually they got some pushback to it. So what are the factors that cause resistance to change? What can we anticipate? And then how can we help our teams and individuals manage the different transitions as they deal with change? Managing transitions is a term used by William Bridges as he deals with the change transitions, and then leading change with John Cotter and learning some of the best practices from him. We'll also look at motivations and drivers to change and some of the motivational theory behind that. And then we'll take a look at personality and change with the Myers-Briggs type indicator and how that can impact the way that people will accept and deal with change. The next level down is into the organizational change. So this is where we look at Morgan's 4 key metaphors of change, where he talks about like brains and flux and transformation and understanding how does that work with your organization and which would be the best way of viewing the organization. These are all perspectives, by the way. There's an organization can actually take on the form of multiple metaphors. You just got to figure out which one makes the most sense, and then you can apply appropriate change strategies. We'll look at the culture and the climate of change and how that can help the change itself. We'll look at different approaches to organizational change as well as the dynamics of what we refer to as emergent change. So that's what's happening internally within the organization. And then what are the roles that people will play, from being a sponsor to a change manager to those being impacted by the change. And then the drivers for change. So what's causing the change to occur in the first place, and what are some of the benefits of the change management. The next one we look at is our stakeholder engagement and communications. So we're going to look at 7 principles of stakeholder engagement as well as communication approaches, 6 factors to encourage your stakeholders to get on board with the change, how to improve your overall communication effectiveness with the scripting and taking into consideration your audience, and then what are the communication channels that you might want to consider as you are putting together your communication plan and your strategy. The Change Management Foundation program is also going to look at the change practice strategies and tools. So with the change impact, we look at analyzing the impacts of change on the organization. We'll look at the McKinsey 7S model. We'll also review stakeholder impact assessments, and then we move on to the change readiness, which takes a look more at how do we get the team ready for change? How do we build organizational readiness by involving the right parties and addressing some of the resistance to change? How do we develop the team? What are some of the the stages that they go through as you are dealing with change, and how do you keep them all together and engaged and motivated. And then how do we prepare for the resistance, because resistance is going to show itself when you introduce anything new. So the Change Management Foundation program is going to cover a lot of content, and then we start moving towards the exam. So you will be provided with sample exam quiz questions and papers so that you can answer them throughout the 3 days and take them home in the evenings and practice. It's a 40-minute exam, and it is conducted on the end of day 3. It's closed book, so sorry, there's no collaborative learning, so you can't talk to anybody, and no cheating. It's in a silent environment where everything is closed book and quiet, and then there's 50 questions that you need to answer. All questions are multiple choice, and you're only required to get 25 out of the 50 questions correct. So you just have to score 50% in order to pass. And you require a pass for the foundation exam for you to be able to participate in the Change Management Practitioner program. So that's the prerequisite for that. So now that we have an idea of the Change Management Foundation, I'm going to switch us over to the Change Management Practitioner course. So this one is only the 2 days. Here you're going to be reviewing the key principles and defining what needs to be learned by all people in a change initiative. You're going to be able to appreciate the project environment itself and which change is governed and delivered, and how change is managed. You're going to learn about organizational levers, how different processes are adopted more than others. We'll look at the different reinforcement loops as it relates to change, and how we can use that to sustain the change so that it becomes truly embedded in the organization and it's not just a fad. Ultimately, this course is going to help teach you how to apply your change management learning to your organization to help them deal with the change. And it's also going to prepare you for the Change Management Practitioner exam on day 5. So the overview kind of looks like this, where you will finish your exam on day 3 and you pass it. Then you move on to day 4, where we look at project management and change initiatives, and then we will end off the day around sustaining change and the tools around that. And then we'll also get you ready for the exam. What you'll notice in the orange is the changes that were made to the overall structure of the course. Previously, we were focused a lot more on leading the change, but they've now included that as part of the foundation. And this takes more a look at the actual tools and strategies that you need to adopt the change and to reinforce it within the organization. And then on day 5, we'll do the exam solely. So the Change Practitioner program, the overview of it is that we'll start off looking at the project management, and we'll look at change initiatives and the project environment and understand how the projects are selected in the first place, and then from project methodologies and then program methodologies and how that relates. And then we look at the sustaining change, which is really the area that a lot of people were asking for more information. So what are the levers of change, and how can we leverage those? What are the levels of adoption? Because people aren't very quick to wanting to adopt the change, so there's usually a process that they have to go through. And then how can we attain critical mass, which is the point where most of the organization is on board with the change, and once you've hit that tipping point, that's where you're able to pull the rest of the organization, whether they're kicking or screaming, they're going to be coming with you, and they're going to be involved in this change, whether they like it or not. And then how do you reinforce the change using the systems, the structures, your internal policies and procedures, and make sure that they're all aligned. And then lastly, we look at strategic change management tools and how they can be applied to your cultural change, your mergers and acquisitions, your IT-based changes, and your restructuring. We'll also review the exam so that you're prepared and you're ready to go for that on day 5. The practitioner exam will build on your learning from the Effective Change Manager's Handbook, which was the little book that I showed you at the beginning, and then it'll also review the APMG Practitioner Handbook. The foundation exam basically tested your knowledge and understanding of the key change management concepts, but the practitioner exam is going to go one step further. It's going to actually test your application of the models and the approaches and the concepts so that you can truly use these strategies in any given situation, and in particular yours in your organization. The practitioner exam is 2.5 hours in length, and that includes time for you to read the case studies. It's an open book exam, So yay, you don't have to memorize everything at this point, but you kind of need to know where things are in the book. So that is not an excuse for you not to read the latter half of the book because it's open book, but it's more for you to be able to refer to your notes. You have 4 different types of questioning on the practitioner exam. So there's multiple choice, which most of you are probably familiar with, multiple response. So that's where you've got, they give you a question and you may have 2 of the answers are correct. And then matching, so they give you a reason and the actual statement, and you have to match them together. And then you've got assertion and reasoning type questions, which they provide you with a bunch of information, and then you have to be able to find, does A equal B, or is A because of B, or if not, then it's something else. And I know that sounds a little complicated, but once you see the exam and we've gone through some of the practice papers, it'll make way more sense. The exam paper consists of a scenario booklet, which is usually a case study that's either something to deal with a culture change, a restructure in the organization, perhaps it's an IT-based system that's being introduced, or a merger perhaps. And then you've got your question books, and then you've got your answer booklets, and you're going to use pencil only to answer these questions. The practitioner exam has 4 questions. All of them are compulsory to answer. You don't lose any marks for wrong answers, so it's best that you just answer them all to the best of your ability. Each question is subdivided between 4 or 5 subparts, which will be on different topics within the change syllabus, and that covers change in the individual, change in the organization, communications and stakeholder engagement, and change management practice. Each of the questions is worth 20 marks for a total of 80 marks for the paper, and you need to get 40 out of 80, which is 50%, in order for you to pass and get your CMP designation. So that brings us to, well, what does the certification mean? This all sounds really fancy, and I get to write CMP after my name, but so what? What does that mean? Well, you become globally recognized as somebody who is a certified change management practitioner. It demonstrates that you have taken the time to enhance your knowledge of change management, and that you understand the principles that are with regards to change, and that you're actually able to apply the change management techniques to your environment as well as other organizational environments. It'll help you lead change initiatives in your organization, and as things continue to change, it'll help you select the appropriate strategies so that you can effectively plan your communications, and as well as deal with individual, team, and organizational changes as they occur, and that you're able to select the most appropriate responses. At the end of the program, all successful candidates will have an option to enroll in an online registry for free. Basically, what it will allow you to do is to go in and see who is a change management practitioner with APMG. It'll include information like the name, the candidate numbers, and which exams were taken and the dates. And you can decide whether or not you want to make your exam results public. So if you want everybody to see what you passed by, if it was 51% or if it was 100%, this is totally your call. Or otherwise, you can just let people know that, yeah, you just passed, and that's sufficient. But it's a great way of double checking to see if somebody is who they say they are and if they actually do have their CNP. So you can't just put that after your name if you don't have the designation, because it can be verified. The great thing about APMG is that it is globally recognized, and it's an international organization. Their headquarters is in the United Kingdom, and they've got global offices in Australia, China, Germany, India, Malaysia, Netherlands, and in the United States. They have done a lot of work to ensure that the content for the new program is aligned with the Change Management Institute. So for those of you who choose to participate in this program, you're going to benefit from a very consistent message that is high quality and services people globally. So the information that you learn is not just for us in Canada, it's right across North America, and they'll also talk about how this works across the world, really. And then you'll be able to custom tailor your solutions to deal with your specific needs in your organization. Just so you know, there was a lot of rigor put behind the scenes to make this course happen. myself as a trainer had to meet several requirements. So there was many prerequisites that had to be fulfilled to demonstrate my full understanding and knowledge of the topic. I had to be interviewed. I had somebody review my facilitation skills. They saw me deliver the course, and then I was videotaped so where they got to evaluate it. I also received independent verification through a change management knowledge examination, and that was a verbal one with an interviewer, and then I also had to complete both of the exams, as you do too, to ensure that I passed. And my pass rate was not 50%, just to be clear. I actually have to pass with above 70 to be able to present the materials to demonstrate full knowledge of the program. And then lastly, TitleShift as an organization had to be assessed for their quality management system. And that was a very rigorous process, which involved detailing all of our standards, all of our processes, how we make sure that everything is in alignment with the methodology that APMG has. And then we also go through continuous improvement and spot checks to make sure that we are adhering to their knowledge and training capabilities. So this, now we can open up the floor to any questions that you have with regards to the CMP and any of the material that I've presented so far. So I'd like to open up the question poll. So if anybody has any questions, you're free to ask me now. So the cost and the location for the training. It'll be a Toronto-based training, and I think it's just under $3,000. It's like $2,975, and it will be downtown Toronto. The details will be sent to you in an email once you register online for the program. And after this webinar, you'll all get the details. For all of you who have registered, you'll get more details for that. Is it affiliated with PMI? Yes, it is. So for those of you who are your Project Management Institute, you will get PDUs for attending the program. So not to worry, for those of you who are looking under the leadership aspect, you will get PDUs for this course. It works out to being approximately 35 PDUs because it's for 5 days. What does APMG stand for? Good question. It's APMG. It's APM Group. So the G is for group, but the APM is just their acronym. The Association for Project Managers Group is what I'm getting here. Yes, so there you go. Let's see, we've got another question. This one's a long one. Isn't this just a certificate you are providing, and then you would have to do another exam with ACMP and CMI to actually call yourself a practitioner? No, that is not correct. So this course, while you will get you get 2 sets of certificates. One's a certificate of completion of the course, so it means that you actually sat through and you attended it, and then you get a certificate from APMG once you've passed the examinations, and you have the first one you'll get for your foundation, but the second one you get for the practitioner. Once you receive your certificate from APMG saying that you've passed the practitioner exam, then you can call yourself a change management practitioner. You don't have to go through ACMP or CMI to actually call yourself a practitioner. That's a great question, because I'm sure others had the same thing and were wondering about that. What percentage of attendees are successful in getting certified? So I can only speak to my courses when I've trained them. To date, I've only had one participant who did not pass the change management practitioner exam on his first try. So it took him 2 tries, but everybody else has passed it on their first try. So at this point, it would be 100% of all of my participants who've gone through have passed it. My goal is to make sure that you pass. I don't want to see any of you fail. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that I'm answering all of your questions, that we go through all the review of the exam, that we're going to focus in on the areas that they're going to be testing you on, so that you're equipped with the tools for you to be able to pass the course. If you failed the exam the first time, do you have to take the entire course to do the exam again? Short answer is yes, you have to sit with me all over again. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to sit with me all over again. You just have to write the exam. What I will do, though, is I'll work with you to figure out what were some of the areas that you need some additional assistance with, and then we'll work together so that we make sure that you pass that exam the second time around. Do we have to do 5 days back to back, or could we do the first 3 days and be completed together and the last 2 days at a future date? Excellent question, Brian. So what you can do the first 3 days for the foundation, and you can pass that, and then you can come back at a later point in time and do the next 2 days. So we have one session that's in May, and we've got another session that's coming up in August. So should you choose to, you can do the first 3, the foundation, in May, and then you can do the last 2 in August. If you choose to wait much later than that, so like maybe next year sometime, because, and I've had actually a participant that's done that, you're more than welcome to do so. The only thing is that you tend to forget a lot of the information because there's such a huge gap in between. So you'll basically have to go back and review all of it. It's sometimes easier just to get it all done in one shot, but it's totally up to you if you want to break it up into 3 days and then 2 days. So that's an excellent question. Thanks for asking that, Brian. How soon after can you do the exam again if necessary? So if you fail the foundation exam, you can pretty much do that immediately. If you wanted to, I would suggest to take the night and review your work, and then we could probably arrange something so you could do it first thing in the morning. But you can technically do it right afterwards because they will generally send a backup exam if you have to do a rewrite. And for the practitioner exam, those get mailed back to APMG headquarters. So what happens is it takes about 5 days for you or so to get the results. And then once you know if you've passed or failed, if you failed at that point after you found out 5 days later if you wrote the exam, then you can set up a time with me and I'll invigilate it whenever it's convenient with your schedule. There is no cost to write a second exam. I see that as a question. We've already built in that cost. So if you happen to fail the exam, you can write a second one for free. Yes, 6 to 8 people can attend the course together. I see that being asked. So if that's like an intact team, fantastic. They can do that. If you're looking to have the CMP run separately for your organization as an intact team, that's great. And then what we will do is we'll use whatever change you're working on right now as sort of like the case study throughout the 5 days. If you're going to the open program, you'll have the benefit of hearing other different organizations and the different changes that they're going through, and then we apply the tools and strategies to multiple different change initiatives. Okay, I believe I've answered all of the questions. Asking, sorry, I see another few more coming in here. Any plans for U.S. site classes? If there's enough demand and we've got enough people who say that they would like to have a U.S. class, we'll create one and have it run down there. Depends on what state that you're looking at too. If we've got people from all over different states in the U.S., then we'll have to find a centralized location. How many folks are expected for the May session? 15 to 20 would be the expectation. How often are the exams provided in a year? So they're on a rotation. I think there's like 11 or so exams that they just keep rotating every week. So they and then they start mixing up the questions too. The exams that you will get to prepare are actual exams that were used. So you have a good idea what you're expected to get, but in terms of us, we have 2 open programs at a year that TitleShift offers so far, and as we get more demand for it, we'll run more programs. Once you're certified, how do you keep your certification valid over years? By PDUs similar to PMP? Actually, you don't. That's a very good question. You do not need to do like PMI and take a bunch of PDUs. All you need to do, once you've got your certification, that's it. You've got it, and you just continue to practice. There is an exam that they usually have once every 3 to 5 years, and that's for any changes or updates. So if you want to remain current with your CMP, you can take that exam, and that will cover over any of the differences between the old course syllabus to the new course syllabus. So once you have your CMP, they can't take that away from you, but what you can do is to remain current by taking the another exam. And I believe that exam is just 1 hour, and it's about 40 questions too. What organizations, banks are currently adopting to the best practices as per APMG? So we've had, let's see, I think it was Scotia Bank had went through it, Meridian, and TD, we had someone from there go to as well. What organizations? Okay, so we're looking at others. There's actually a whole long list. So if you were looking for that, I would suggest to get in touch with Catherine McKernan, and she can give you the full list of all the organizations that have currently gone through the course. Okay, I think that's it, because now I'm starting to see the same questions I've answered before. So I want to thank all of you for your attention and for your participation in this webinar. I hope I've been able to answer any of your questions. If you've got more questions or you want any more information with regards to the program, you can feel free to contact myself, or you can send, you'll receive a message after this webinar with an email detailing the description of the course, the outline, as well as more information where the CMP is going to be held and what you need to do to register. So with that, I'm going to end today's webinar and wish you all well and hope you have a wonderful day.